welcome back to Cast Me to Hell with me, Seb.
And with me, Robbie.
And this week we return to our video nasty segment with an unusual... I don't know how to describe this film. It kind of came out of nowhere. We are looking at Snuff from 1975.
And it's appropriately named for a video nasty as well. I quite like that.
It is. If you haven't seen this segment before, Snuff, our video nasty, as part of our video nasty segment, it looks at films that were banned in the UK during the 70s and 80s, during the major video nasty kind of period of UK banning from the BBFC and different prosecutions and things like that happened, and we're kind of working our way through the list of the films that were banned. There was a whole range of them.
72 of them, I think.
Yeah, 72 altogether. We've worked for a few already. We've done Last House on the Left, and we've done Evil Dead, and most recently, Eaten Alive.
Was that the most recent one?
Possibly.
Yeah. It's always good when we
off the top of my head, I'm like, what was the most recent one? I might be wrong. We might have done another one more. Oh, and no, it wasn't. It was
New York Ripper.
New York Ripper.
That was a fun. But I find all of these films are either really low budget American films, or I would say I would put my bet down that at least half of them are European, like Italian or Spanish.
Yeah, there is a lot. Snuff is Argentinian, technically.
Yeah.
It was just bought out by someone in America who then kind of changed it around. But it was an Argentinian film. So again, that's why I kind of... that's why I said to you before you watched, because I just chose this randomly one night. I had to wait for the list and was like, fuck it. I sent you like several options before you could even reply to me. I was like, fuck it, I'm already watching Snuff, so we're going to do that one.
You sent me the list, like I think it was 3. I know Cannibal Holocaust was one, which I'm excited to cover. Mm-hmm. There was another one I can't remember. And then you just sent me, or we can watch Snuff. And then you sent me another message saying, we're watching Snuff. And I was like, this podcast has taken a very dark turn.
Oh, yeah, man. And to me, like, Cannibal Holocaust, quite like it. That, to me, that was like, that's the obvious choice for the video nasty. I'm going to go for one that's like, I wanted to go like, New York Ripper was quite like controversial, and because it was a little bit more European. Was that Fulci?
Yes, it was
Fulci. That was Fulci. So, you know, it had some controversial, some quite sexual elements and stuff like that.
Quite a lot.
And I was like, because we're doing video nasties, now we've done some of the ones, it's weird to say the like Last House on the Left or Evil Dead, but I don't want to say those are the tamer ones.
Yeah, definitely.
We kind of done the more, we started with, I'd say, with the more commercial ones.
Yeah.
And now I'm suddenly into the ones where I'm looking down the list and going, which one of these sounds like it's fucking like a dirty ass?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Which one of these sounds like it might make me feel like sick to my stomach? And suddenly I was like, that's the one I want. So then I heard about Snuff and I was like, yeah, that sounds that sounds dank.
That sounds good. That sounds dank. Well, I mean, before we get into the film, I will do my classic spiel. Just to remind people to hit that subscribe button. We're nearly at 50 subscribers on Apple Podcasts. We nearly got into the top 50 charts in Great Britain, film and history. So I think we're like 30 at the moment, but we never seem to actually get on the page. So salute to everybody for doing that. We're still in the Italian one somehow.
New York Ripper, baby.
New York Ripper. And Suspiria.
And Suspiria.
They can't get enough of
2
that.
class little episodes. Go find them.
So please remember to hit that subscribe button and leave us a lovely review. This film is fucking weird, man.
Oh yeah. This was weird. This I was going to say this was me like reading about it, saying, "Oh, it sounds shit." I'd seen on the thing that it's not exactly well reviewed or anything like that, which I wasn't expecting it to be for like the content of what it was and the fact that it's a classic. Basically, they sold it as something it really wasn't, but they tried to sell it off. They tried to use and discuss so that it sounded like a terrible human act to do.
Yeah.
And then they tried to sell that as we can make money off of that if they think that's the case. So yeah, I literally just I was like, first, can I find it? I found it, so I was like, fuck it, I'll just watch it.
You just googled Snuff film.
Just do a Snuff film, and whatever
list.
popped up. Yeah, that's it. I'm probably being
on a
looked
list.
into right now. What is he even up to? But no, I think I found the idea within this segment. Obviously, yes, we have a major focus on the British side of this. It's a nice British kind of link to segments. But these also tend to have controversies that go around them. But they also tend to deal with taboo taboo things and things like that. And this film is, I don't know. I would almost say that this film kind of builds, as in a large section of the start of this film is pretty much just some of the worst horror films you can see. It's terrible. It's not a good film at all. There are very few redeemable qualities. There's a little bit that's something that happens right at the beginning, and then I'd say it is a bit of a slog. But then when things start to happen, it gets into that it's so bad it's almost good area and then towards the end it just gets kind of shocking, and it's that odd mix of you're like, what makes I've seen a lot of people say no one would probably remember this film if it wasn't for its ending. Its ending is what made this film, or its advertising campaign for the film is what made this film popular. So it's a weird one. I don't know. How did you feel as you were starting to watch this? Because it hasn't been sprung upon you. Because I know you watched it broken up a little.
Yeah. Strangely enough, I watched 25 minutes before I went to work. And then I got back and I watched the rest of it. And whilst it is, it's extremely low quality, the dubbing is absolute dog shit. And anybody who listens to our New York Ripper, Suspiria episodes, go check them out, will know that, I love Giallo and I love, Euro horror. So I'm not against dubbing. I quite like it. But the more I kind of watched this film, and once it got maybe to the halfway mark where it actually starts to pick up, I found that there was a certain charm to it. It's effectively because it's an hour and 20 minutes, I think. So the first hour and 15 minutes basically tells a long way of going around it, but it tells the story of kind of like a Manson-esque figure and these women he has as his followers. Satan. Yeah. Satan. Do you submit to Satan?
Yeah. It's one of those names where it's like you think you're being really clever, aren't you?
Yeah.
It's like getting midway through the film and you're like, they mean he's Satan.
Yeah.
Oh Jesus Christ. Satan. It was so clever.
It was there all along. But it opened up with, it opens up with a riff and a soundtrack that is basically ripping off Born to Be Wild. I heard it and I was like, this is it, but maybe one chord change.
Is this Born to Be Wild? And I was like, no, it's just the chords slightly.
The chords are slightly. I think the bass line definitely has a run that's the same. And if you get to about halfway through the Born to Be Wild song, and it gets to the part where it's kind of like the organ bit, and you have a steady drum, kind of like snare drum beat. It has that as well, so it's very much like somebody would play this.
It's extremely close to that song.
Yeah, and
I can't remember if there was any lyrics or it was just the music.
No, it's just that. It's just the music.
Yeah.
I think they could afford lyrics.
Yeah, I think it's like one of those we can use 20 seconds of this song and not have to pay for something.
Not have to pay for it. Yeah.
Yeah,
but it effectively follows a cult leader who's not really that charismatic, called Satan. I'm just going to call him Satan because I can't. I'm going to mess up the pronunciation of that. I just call him Satan, so I'm just going to call him Satan off the bat. Get the fuck up out of the way. And he's got this kind of cult of women with him that he basically just half tortures. He's like this kind of Jim Morrison mixed with Charles Manson kind of figure, isn't he? He's supposed to be kind of mystic and I see the world anyway.
Yeah, you don't exactly full on ever get to really spend time with him, really. You kind of just only see him from the perspective of the women normally, the way he's talking to the women, him doing this unusual, it sometimes even does almost like a dream fantasy kind of changes, a lot of the time when you see him it kind of changes to a not fully black and white, kind of like a bluish tone of kind of colour. Tends to change colour when he's there, but it doesn't do it all the time, not consistently enough that it happens. And sometimes it even seems like it's almost shaky, or like they've put a filter over it to make it look kind of dreamlike when he's talking. He doesn't really have a huge part in it, but you can see the control he has over them, I guess, is the point.
Yeah.
He is that Manson character of, like, he's not, obviously, you're not seeing him because you're not going to see him kill anyone, because he's not that. He's the cult leader. He makes the other people kill for him. He makes them do it. Yeah. So and we follow several of, like, the women. Most of them are pretty much unnamed. Pretty much. You
have Angelica.
Yeah.
Because the main kind of character is this woman called Terry, who is she's a movie star, which is obviously very, like, you know.
Well, she's like married to like a producer. She's with a producer.
She's with a producer,
he's like her husband and stuff, and so she's having an affair. All of these bits are very convoluted. This is why, to me, I was a bit like. I was like, one, obviously it's dubbed anyway, so some of it doesn't make complete sense anyway.
No, definitely not.
But in this case, it really doesn't make sense.
No.
They just pop scenes in. They're just suddenly like, what the fuck is going on?
Yeah. Like, there's a bit when they arrive and the producer's getting interviewed, and they're like, can we talk to you? You know, what are you doing here? What's the plan? Because they go to South America. It's like, it's not trying to pass off as somewhere else. And he's like, I don't give interviews, you know.
Yeah.
And they're like, well, what are you doing here? And he's like, well, we're filming, we're doing a film. What about this actress? Yeah, she's a great actress. She'll do whatever I direct. And he basically just gives an interview.
Yeah,
it's really kind of weird.
Yeah, you know? He just starts saying exactly. Some of the dialogue is awful. It doesn't really make sense in some of the scenes, and it will reference things that are happening, like, in the story so directly. So obviously, there's no subtlety whatsoever to him. Basically, even that line, like, she'll do whatever I want, it feels like just in front of him. It's like, who the fuck? Like, sometimes it's felt a bit like, who are you talking to? You don't even know who these people are. Like, why are you going on? You said you're not going to talk, and you're just going to keep going and going and going. And it really does, with certain characters in this film, you do wonder what the fuck is going on. Like, with him as the producer, and obviously you have Terry, and she is pregnant.
She's pregnant.
So this is hugely influenced by Manson murders. So you can see where this is going.
Kind of a shout and take.
And he pisses off, basically, because there is a scene where you have, obviously, the women that are part of the cult and things like that, as well as... Does he come into contact with Satan? That's the only thing I couldn't remember. No, he doesn't.
No, so
he comes into contact with one of the women, doesn't he?
He has Terry is, I don't know if she's I think she's having an affair. It's kind of very loosely hinted at that the guy knows that his wife's getting, or his fiance's getting pounded by this, like, really young, handsome guy who has a speedboat. And he's got his
That's why
house.
I mixed up at one point in the story. Because the guy does a very similar haircut style to Satan. So I was like, she's banging Satan.
He's banging Satan,
and that's why I thought there was that interaction. But it's the husband and the lover that come into. I think at one point I was just like, what the fuck is going on?
And it's that kind of film. It's like insane. It's almost insanely kind of like boring for the first. Like half an hour. Like, when I watched that first
this is why I'm grasping at things right now, because I gotta be honest, I barely remember the first 40 odd. There's a certain scene where suddenly my brain kicked in and was like, what the fuck is happening now? Like, I was following this, and what the fuck is happening now? And then from that scene, it actually gets somewhat interesting. That's when more of the horrific stuff actually happens. Earlier in the film, I don't know how much you want to talk about that, but earlier in the film, I don't really have, like,
there's
tons.
a couple, because there's a point where I went from being like, this is absolute dross that I'm watching, like, what the fuck, to being like, actually, I don't know whether this is, like, one of the greatest films I've ever seen, in the wrong way, you know, because, like, so we have, like, a carnival that's happening, and some dude gets killed by one of the cult women dressed as Terry.
That's Terry's part, like his like part producer that works with her. That's Terry's producer.
So he gets
stabbed in the chest,
and then we find out Like, this is jumping over like the first half an hour maybe, and then we find out that that evening like 7 other murders happened at the carnival, and all of these same knives were found there. And for me, I was kind of like, oh, well, that's actually kind of cool, because you're like, a whole bunch of this is happening. You know,
the way it's shot definitely looked to me like they'd got the actors in the middle of an actual like carnival.
Yeah.
But I don't want to say, I'm not sure whether they had permission to be there, because it looked like they were literally going for any like secluded spot, alley that they could get away from.
Anywhere.
But no one around them was kind of stopping for anything. So there are like, pretty sure at certain points there are people just basically walking past or into the shot, just like
looking at the camera.
I'm pretty sure apparently there is a point in this film where you can basically tell that like one of the crew is basically like stood like in the background, or at one point, if you listen, you can hear one of the crewmen kind of say like, where's the like that area or something like that. So it's like, it's that kind of film where, you know, it's not really it's not masterfully made.
I thought there'd be somebody who's like never been on camera before, and it's like, you know, in like the 1900s when like, or 1900, when they first started like filming people, and all they seemed to do was like take their hats off and like wave at they just do that, and just in the background of this killing's happening, just constantly in every shot waving his hat. But that was the point where I was like, okay, I literally put one of my notes that like the dialogue and the acting is so stilted, because then we have this really weird conversation with a police officer who I don't ever think turns up again, about that stabbing, because the woman's dressed the same as her.
Yeah.
Then we get this weird, I don't know if you know, if you remember this, but this weird scene where they find out that Terry's pregnant, and Satan is kind of like, perfect, it will awaken the cosmos or something like that, and he stood like shirtless by a tree, and then just he said, like, he goes to make some like explanation of like what the plan is, and then it just becomes the stars, and it's like garbage that he's just talking, and it just moves on quick. And then the bit that really fucking killed me, and this is the point where it like jumped the shark in the positive way though, where I was like, I'm actually enjoying this now, is when we introduced her the guy she's having an affair with, his dad, who is just like this aristocratic man smoking a pipe. And then they're in his mansion, because obviously he lives in a mansion, and they're talking, and then the guy's just like, the deal hasn't gone through, I need to make sure the deal goes through today. And you're like, oh, it's probably like oil or something like that.
Yeah,
it's like, we're selling guns to the Middle East. This dude's an arms dealer. And then they start arguing about this, and he says, oh, it's disturbing to hear a German supplying arms to the enemy of the Jews. They have an argument, and then he's like, is it any worse than German guns killing Arabs? And then he says like, was that so different if it's Commander Understeigt or something like that? And then just zooms in on his face as he says that, and then the next thing, Satan and walks in shirtless, and some other woman none of these characters have met each other before. Yeah. And they start getting into this massive argument about butchers. And they're like, the one who wields the knife is the one who provides for all. And he's like, how dare you talk about butchers, they're nothing but jackals. And they get into this really melodramatic argument as nobody else is reacting.
Yeah.
And he says, so you don't like jackals, get out of my house. And it just ends.
I think it is. I think it is literally around, as we start to get more into that, like Satan, we see more of like the mansion. We see a little bit more of the women, because there is a point when we seem to see a lot of Terry stuff.
Yeah.
That's the boring bit, to be honest.
Oh,
that's boring as hell. As soon as we go away from Terry, and then to be honest, after that, we don't really come back to Terry very much until we get to the ending. This is what I mean. It suddenly changes focus completely, as if they were watching it and going, "This is boring as fuck."
Yeah. What the fuck is this?
Let's get back over to the cult. So it's like they were trying to make. They were trying to make, as in a film basically loosely based on the Manson murders.
Yeah.
They were trying to follow the female and they were trying to follow, as in Polanski's wife and that guy, you know what I mean? And they were trying to follow that part, and then suddenly while they were filming it, the guy who has done stuff like porn and stuff like that, there's Michael Finley and Horatio Fredrickson. This is actually technically free, and Simon Nupton, because there's 3 directors on the film, because I think because they had to change and add it and change stuff around. Which is why you could call it an Argentinian film, an American film, because each director was like a different country. So again, that just led to more fucking confusion. But yeah, it feels like, because it shifts away from her so rapidly that you kind of think, did they just get bored of her? They were just like, we're going to make this serious kind of film about the cult. And the cult, because till that point, the cult are very much in the background. Just little tiny scenes splattered where you normally just see them kill someone like a shopkeeper. Or, so, they walk into, they kill someone. And it's only those little moments you see that they're kind of spreading or getting closer to Terry's character.
Well, I think there's been
and
2
when it
deaths.
kills her producer, that's when it's like the closest. But after that kind of carnival scene, we don't really follow her very much after that. And that's when the whole film shifts and mainly seems to focus on the cult or a completely different member of the cult, a brand new member of the cult, to follow them. So I literally was there I felt like they maybe thought about making one film and then went, now let's make the one about the weird killings and what does it take to be a cult member and what kind of fucked up person joins this cult of these people.
Well, there's that weird thing of... So, Angelica is the character who we see join the cult. And it's strange because she's friends with the dude that Terry's banging.
Yeah.
And then she joins.
Because she was from that man. She has links with the mansion. She knows the people that she'd been staying there or friends there or she'd stayed there before kind of thing.
But it's not implied that she's in the cult until she gets to the scene where they're torturing her, making her submit.
Yeah.
It's not there's no hints that she's an inside woman. It's just the next thing you know, it's got that blue tinge. A bunch of women have pinned her down, and they're like, "Who can save you?"
That's the most confusing thing. That when it went to the blue tinge, I was like, okay, is this so? Is this meant to be the flashback of her joining beforehand?
Yeah.
Which it might have been, but I don't know because it wasn't clear enough for me to work out. I didn't know if it was just that. But basically, all that turns into is just a fucking scene.
Yeah.
Where Satan's just banging Angelica. Is it Angelica?
Yeah. He just goes. I think he says something like, now it's time to submit to me, and then he just pounds her in doggy, and they all watch.
Yeah. You're just watching her, or you're watching the women just rub their nipples as they stare to it. And they were just...
And then we get a lesbian kiss.
Yeah, and they're literally just... It's literally is basically borderline softcore kind of porn.
It reminded me of in It's Always Sunny, when they're making Lethal Weapon. And then Frank's just banged it. Oh, yeah. It was literally like that.
It literally was. It was like a sex scene out of nowhere. It so just was you're okay, I mean, obviously Satan, obviously if he's leading the cult, he's going to be banging. He's the only pipe there. He's going to be banging. I mean, 90% of the reason anyone makes a cult is because he gets to bang.
To bang. That's it.
He can bang the men, the women, the children,
the animals, anything.
I meant to say animals, not children. I didn't mean to go that dark then.
I mean, maybe it's a cult.
I just didn't mean to go that. I don't know why. In my mind, animals is not nearly as dark as the children.
Yeah.
I just went very dark.
But anyway,
that's why
called Snuff.
Exactly. This was going to be a dark ass episode.
Yeah.
But this is why that's why they're making that cut because he can just do whatever he wants to everyone.
Piping, man.
And he's just a weird ass bloke that just says a few minor words in a monotone voice.
Yeah. But then that's it. We don't see him again after.
No, that's what I mean.
He pipes, and then he just busts, and then he just falls asleep for the rest of the film.
He's busted a nut in Angelica, and that now means that she has the power to go and do his deeds.
To go and kill.
But that point drew me in, and I do remember the conversation about the fucking butcher and the fucking all that shit.
It was so funny.
That was so fucking weird. That's where I was like, what the fuck is going on? I was trying to get back into it. I think around her producer partner kind of dying was when I was like, okay, I lost interest for about 10 minutes here. I'm back in, and then
we get the final scene with Satan and Angelica, and I know you want to talk about this, because then he's like,
Yeah.
so you like willingly submitted your life to the control of somebody else, and then she's like,
I have always
submitted
submitted myself to someone else. And then we go back to her flashback. And honestly, this is the point. So if you're listening to this episode so far and you're like, there's no fucking reason I need to watch this film, it sounds absolutely shit, dog shit. But between those lines earlier, but from about this, I don't know if this was mid-work point for the film, 40 minutes, 50 minutes. It was most of the way through the
40
film.
50 minutes, yeah.
But anyway, this backstory and pretty much everything I think that follows this
is class
in either a shocking way or, in this case, I was fucking creasing.
I was creasing as well.
Like, I'd sent you a message saying, basically, like, because I knew you were going to watch this film and I knew you'd watch, like, a bit of it in the morning.
Yeah, I hadn't reached this
And I was like, by this point, you must be thinking, what the fuck have I made him watch?
Yeah.
And I was like, because I'd pushed through it and because I was at the boring as hell bit when I first said, right, we're going to watch Snuff anyway, because I was at the point when I was kind of thinking in my head, well, this is boring as shit, so I need to make my partner on the podcast watch this and waste his life with me, because I feel like this is going to be absolute dog shit. But I was like, I don't know how we're going to do anything on this.
We have
so dog shit.
We've committed to the video nasty segment.
We have, but this is when I had to, after this bit, I had to message you and go, like, basically, there's light in the tunnel. It's coming. It's so bad it's good. And I love it. We have a large history of absolutely, we love this kind of shit, like Trolls 2 style, when it's just so terrible, but it's so fucking entertaining.
It's incredible.
Basically, Angelica, we go back to her childhood. First we see a little bit earlier when she's like, when I was 17 and, you know, I had this, and you see her bed with her. You see a flash of that first, then it goes back to, like, the torture.
She's like,
she's banged some dude when she's like 17. She's in bed with him.
But she's like, when he first took me, I was 12 years old.
Yeah.
By the time I was 17, we were lovers. And it's got that, like, really weird voice.
Yeah, she was like,
acoustic guitar.
At first I didn't want it, but by then I kind of loved it. I enjoyed the... And one, obviously, you are in the situation where you're like, so, like, okay, so, like, 17,
really fucking dark.
12 years old with this, like, 40, 50 looking dude who's, like, the owner of the ranch or whatever they stay in. I don't know where the fuck they were. But on a farm or something, their father was part of... But anyway, you're there like, okay... So now we're going into the case of, basically, we're dealing with grooming. We're dealing with the backstory of grooming. And you're like, okay, so you've done, like, the Manson murders. You're trying to take that approach. Yeah. You're trying to take the female approach as a very female-led film. So you're
like, all these people are victims.
You're just thinking in your head before getting into the real funny shit, it's just like, do you think that you're being really artistic and really like, I'm going into these really taboo kind of areas, and by the way, this is before this film was called Snuff. It wasn't original, like this part of the film wasn't originally. Snuff is a later idea.
We'll get to that.
This was called, like, what was it?
A slaughter.
Slaughter. So again, that title doesn't actually fucking work either, to be honest.
No.
But you're dealing with grooming now, so we're about to follow the story of a girl who basically how she becomes that, and you're like, okay, this should be the moment in the film when you're suddenly like, oh shit, like I have to be kind of like, I have to be sensible, I have to be serious now. This is about grooming.
I have to be serious.
Until literally the second after that bed scene, and her first line is someone who sounds in the dub like it's either a woman trying to do a little girl's voice, or it's a man trying to do a little girl's voice. But it literally starts with, like, shouting about her tortoise. Yeah. And she's like, when I lost my tortoise in a field. But it literally sounds as if I tried to do, like, when I was a young girl and I tried to use my tortoise. And it literally is like... What? Okay, I was like, what the fuck? Okay, alright, the seriousness has just been whacked out of this scene. Completely taken away. And then... it's so fucking... The girl looks nothing fucking like Angelica.
She's blonde.
She's blonde. Skin colour not
completely
the same.
Changed.
Yeah, they don't look
She looks like a little, like, German girl.
Yeah.
And she's, like, Argentinian.
Yeah.
in reality.
Yeah, that's what I mean. It doesn't
really
link
weird.
up at all. They don't look right. So that's almost funny enough that you're doing that. And then, I don't know. The dialogue is so fucking bad. But she's like talking to the father, to the guy who groomed her, basically.
Yeah, and it almost plays out. If you've watched Italian horror or Euro horror before, you'll kind of be familiar with weird soundtracks.
Yeah,
like we mentioned it when we did The Wicker Man. You know, like they have like the old folk soundtracks. This soundtrack is like Spanish guitars. And the voiceover is almost like a romance film, but it's about this girl like getting groomed, and then he basically like
the lines she says over the top do not sound overly negative at all times, and yet the tale being told before you
is really weird.
It's like a 50-year-old man who's like, your father can't pay rent, your sister knows what to do with that mouth. Basically,
yeah, he basically says that to her, doesn't he?
He's like, your sister's learned what to do to like basically pay rent or do with that mouth. Now you should learn. You 12-year-old girl, you should learn. It kind of sounds a little bit, again, with So Always Sunny, but it sounds a bit like Dennis Reynolds' erotic memoirs.
Yeah, it is.
The mouth is for entering, not for the exit.
Yeah. My favourite part though was when like they're in bed and it just says, and then father caught me, and like it's almost like, you know, when you watch like a GCSE level play and it's like, and somebody entered, and then somebody enters, and like the dad walks in, sees them in bed, and just goes, "Pig, filthiest of all animals. I will cut out your heart and feed it to the dogs." And then the guy just like nonchalantly just shoots him. And it's like, and then he cuts off his hands and hung them above the farm. And then he went into the swamp, and my brother followed him.
You are damn right about the whole you're damn right about the whole Jesus. It literally is like, you pig, and then like literally it literally looked like a student play, the way he swiftly like moves and just like bang, like he's
bang,
like,
shoots him dead. And then the brother,
she's like, father,
and then the brother,
and he chops off his father's hands and like puts them on top of the thing, which was an oddly like, what the fuck?
Yeah, like what the fuck?
It's like, where the fuck do you live that like you can have like some one like that, and it's like, oh yeah, I'll get away with murder. It's like the police do it, and there's his hands. No,
just branches. But then there's a scene where it goes, he went into the swamp and my brother followed him, and the way in which they show it makes it look like they're walking together, like they're like arm's distance apart, even though he's supposed to have snuck in after him, and he just strangles the rapist in the swamp.
A lake swamp, drops his body in,
kills him, and then it goes, because I noticed this, like it then goes back to the first time he raped her, and it just says, my brother watched whilst I was raped, and then it's just a shot of a young fat boy who stood by a tree, and then it just cuts back.
Again, it's like they're trying to take it in this really artistic approach. Like you just see like her, you see like the girl go forward, like she's about to do some kind of sexual act straight away, basically, and it's just him there. Like literally, the only thing this is missing from that boy is basically him having an ice cream where the top falls on the ground,
or like a bit of gum that pops.
Yeah, like literally, it's like that as it zooms in on his like little fat face.
Yeah, and he's just stood there.
He just stood there as if he's seeing something like terrible. It's like,
I mean,
he is. It is so terrible.
But they make it so funny.
You would not think that this is what you're seeing before you.
Yeah.
This backstory feels like it is being played in such a soap drama.
Yeah.
Like, it feels like telenovela or something like that, you know what I mean?
It.
But with grooming and rape.
It's so fucking... And somebody getting mutilated and somebody getting strangled in a swamp. It's so funny, man.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like, literally, like, cutting off hands, putting them above the fence to be like, this will show everyone that this is that they are not to mess with me, kind of thing.
They have to pay their rent on time. And then literally after, like I said, after that scene where Satan argues with the German dad, you get this scene, which is like the weird like grooming story, and then you get like the bit that they're leading up to, which is the kind of the women going on a rampage, and you get a class bit where they're in a shop. I fucking love.
Oh that. That I mixed that as being earlier, but no,
Well, the one thing I would say is like at this point when you watch this scene, even though it kind of has that it's so bad it's good kind of vibe, you think if they made the whole film like this, they could make it quite good because like the fashion's on point. It's quite like I felt it had that Rob Zombie kind of vibe to it. It's a bit like sweaty. It's a bit hot. It's a bit like quite funny. Like these women are like terrorizing this shopkeeper to the point where he's almost having a heart attack. And then
it had that like 70s like it definitely had that 70 that kind of style to it. Even a little bit like Carpenter or Craven kind of like that kind of dirty, gritty.
I'd say more like Tobe Hooper. It's a bit Texas Chainsaw.
Yeah, it is a bit Texas Chainsaw.
But the scene at the shop where they hold it up and they're just causing trouble, and then like a woman and her daughter turn up, and the old woman says to the main girl, I don't know her name, says like, what kind of joke is this? And she says this joke and just guns her down. And then the little girl's just like, Mum, and she just guns her down. And then we get into this mad firefight where like one of the women ends up getting gunned down, somebody gets gunned down. I noticed they fire like 10 shots without reloading.
Yeah, she gets really shot in the back like 10 times by a dude that already is shot. Because he's on the ground, isn't he?
He steals the gun.
Yeah.
And then as he gets shot by somebody else who has a gun,
he's already been shooting and he gets shot and he's still shooting her, and you're just seeing her like against the wall, just like shaking as like more bullets go into her back.
And then it just goes, and then it literally gets to the end, which is like supposed to be like
because Angelica's in the shop to talk about her bit, because she's in that kind of part, and they're kind of making their way, and then it like this is again it feels so because we don't really know what they're doing, and then suddenly they're just at the gates of the house, and it almost implies like you're meant to remember that Angelica was an important part earlier on, but I don't.
Well, they talk about Terry's baby being the key to something, but then they never explore it. They're just like, she's pregnant. Yes. Is it his? Yes. Then it's the key to the cosmos. And then it's just like, all right, great. Here's like a 10-minute.
I guess this is cult.
Yeah, I guess
so. A lot of it is just like, but can you explain why? I don't know. Aliens or shit.
Aliens, yeah.
Why should I kill this family?
The baby.
Dog told me to.
Yeah, dog told me to. Baby. Baby don't like the dog.
Why is the baby important?
It's the baby. Dog told me to.
So the dog give it a weird stare.
Yes.
Yeah. The truth is like, that is and this is like like you said about that backstory and stuff like that. But you know, this was filmed, like, this was made in Argentina, but even though it's got a terrible dubbing, because, and this isn't even because in like that kind of like, because it was made with foreign actresses to do it cheaply. That's the reason it's dubbed. Yeah. It's because they couldn't afford to do it like a different way. Yeah. So they've dubbed it over, which again to me sounds fucking insane, because it's like, I don't understand how it was cheaper to go to a different country, get actresses to do that, to do these things. I think it was more because of the things he wanted them to do than what, like, than to get actors over in America to do it. Because I was like, how is that easier to then have to edit and dub and add this terrible shit on top of it?
Well, I heard it was filmed without sound.
Yeah. It was filmed without sound because they were using Argentinian actors, and obviously they didn't need Argentinian dialogue, so they didn't use sound because they didn't want to have to remove the sound and replace the sound, because that's more expensive. Like they've done that with some of the Giallo.
Definitely. But it's still really weird.
It doesn't paint a good picture of like another country, or like literally on the poster. Yeah. The picture they said could never be shown. Snuff. The film that could only be made in South America where life is cheap. And it literally is. It's literally selling the idea that basically a continent is like, well, you guys are just dirt, aren't you?
Yeah, let's just...
You guys are shit. I could go to your
We
country.
just kill them.
Like, literally, it's like basically selling you the idea that you go for a holiday in Mexico, everything's cheap because you can literally just walk in and just gun them down.
You just gun them down.
I mean, this is America, but you know, that's America style. But it literally is. It sells such a bad portrait of the idea of like this kind of country, then putting dubbing on top of it. Like,
oh man.
And that's why a lot of the actresses, it just doesn't make sense, and it looks like they don't know what the fuck they're doing. And sometimes you're like, did the director even speak the language or have a translator, or just was like, stand there,
say this,
kneel there, doggy.
Yeah.
That's what you're getting, doggy. Like you just are wondering what, but I guess that cheapness, as we're like building towards the ending parts, but that cheapness is part of why you can see why people might believe that this was a snuff film.
Yeah.
In some ways, because of the marketing, because you could see that there's a lot. You're like, this is so terrible. Like, there's got to be a reason it's made so cheaply and it has to like use. And are these effects real? Now, if you're looking now, then obviously a lot of the blood and stuff, you're like
bright red.
You're like, it's paint. It's like paint stuff.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like you always look back at like 60s, 70s, and 80s films, and like once they'd passed the black and white era, and even then in black and white era, they didn't even use red because it didn't show up as that. They didn't show up as the right like style. But you always look back at it and go like, well, you know what blood looks like.
Yeah.
It's not like suddenly like there's no situation where someone's seen blood until they've got to that. Like, I do always find it hard to believe that no special effects artist, even getting into like the mid 70s, I know there's a certain concept with colorization of like how they could use color on film and and film and stuff like that kind of made it a bit harder to show certain colors. So certain reds that we use now might not have shown up so well. Yeah. But there's still always a part of me that does look back and go one thing of like, is like, I understand it, but at the same time I don't understand why no one in that film industry throughout the 60s and 70s into even the 80s didn't go, blood doesn't look like that. like you literally do it. And even some of like the masters of it, like Savini and stuff, have still done ones where it's like,
it's a bit bright.
It's like
paint like.
That's a bit fit. Like, is it because people were like, oh no, you can't make it look like real blood, otherwise they'll get too squeamish, they'll get too bad. Yeah. Or it's just like, no, this is just easier to make in bulk. But at the same time, you're just there like, I mean, I made fake blood by just literally mixing like red food colouring and washing up liquid. Yeah. It looks like blood. Like, you know what I mean? Like, so you're just there like, how did no one get this until about the 80s?
The first guy, there was like one guy who did all of them, and he just never seen blood before. It's red. Oh, it must look like paint.
And they're like, we have to follow that person.
Yeah. If it doesn't look like that, how do we know? How do we know it's blood?
It's like one day someone's like, holy shit. It's like you're bleeding, mate. It's like,
no, I'm not.
I'm bleeding. That's not blood.
This isn't from the film.
This isn't blood. It's like literally your wrist is cut half off and there's blood pouring down.
Nah.
That's not the right red.
Yeah, that's not the right red, my friend. You're going pale. Nah, that's not the right red.
He like puts it up against the wall, the paint on the wall. You see, this is the right red.
Yeah, this is the red.
Anyway, we'll come back around to that. Back to the to wrap up the story of the film before we get into more of the video nasty style.
Because Angelica, this is one bit, kind of little bit I did like, is Angelica convinces the dad to let her in. Because they know that she always used to hang around there. She was a friend.
That was the dad.
I think it's.
I thought it was like just a security guard at the fence who knew her because she'd been there.
They look very similar.
To be fair,
no, it was a security guard.
It was a security guard.
There's a really weird point
I was mixing it up with like the Terry's, partner guy. Because he also has bald head and bald head and hair around there. That classic look. And so did the security guard. So I was there like, why is that?
It is
really important. Why is he opening the gate? And I was like, oh, it's not the same guy.
It is a security guard because I remember there was a point at the end I put down. But we get this. They go in, and then we haven't even named him. But the guy she's having an affair with goes off and pipes another woman.
Yeah, I'm sure we know. He pipes. He pipes Terry. No, it is. I'm sure it's still Terry that he's banging.
Because then Terry's in the bed at the end.
Well, we're missing that odd scene where we have the two people, all the people, like the woman. It's a different that's not there. We have the two people sat around the pool, the two guys, and he's like, my wife is basically.
He's a cuck.
My wife is basically good to go. Like she'll just. It's like I like. This scene was actually. I found this scene fucking hilarious as well.
Yeah,
because
I forgot about this one.
The two guys are sat there looking like. See, and he's like, look how good my wife is. Look how fancy. She'll go with anyone, and I'll let her go with anyone because I like watching. And then, the other guy is like, well, he's like looking her up and going, well, let's go then. Let's go down to, which he says is like a. I swear he says like a room, as if it was like the office or something like that. Yeah. And then instead they walk down to this basically like
open air.
This open air. So it looks like it was like just bricks around the side.
Yeah, it's
and
so
there's
weird.
just a bed in there. It's like, I don't know. This is where we do the fuck, apparently.
This is the fuck room.
It literally looks like, again, like as if someone was trying to make like a student film and they were like, we can make this look like an actual room.
Yeah,
we'll get a bed frame.
Make
it look like an actual room. But the funniest part of this scene is like, you've got him leading this other dude's wife off down to bang her, and then the husband is then like following behind in an almost Benny Hillish kind of like he's like looking around, but I don't know why his arms were like flailing behind him, like he couldn't literally like some kind of Mancunian like Liam Gallagher, like all right, and literally like go behind, and then finally he like catches up with them before they go into the room, like before he goes in, like he's gonna walk into the room, and he's like. Well, he's like, I'm gonna watch. He's like, no, you stay out here. He's like, well, this was part of the deal of you letting me bang my wife, is that you what? Yeah. And but he didn't really put up a fight. He's just like, right, he's not gonna let me watch. Well, I guess I'll climb.
And that's the thing. Is
he just starts climbing the room.
I mean, you have to. A room to me implies that it has a ceiling, because he just climbs up, and it's like 4 walls. And then like no ceiling and a bed, and he just like climbs onto like the
and the
wife
and the guys start like banging,
and he's watching,
and then he's
fully clothed in a suit. He ain't even beating it.
Yeah, I know, he's not even beating it. He's just like staring over, like he likes to watch his wife. But you're also there like as like. I mean, polygamy or whatever.
Polygamy?
Not polygamy. Whatever it is. Polyamorous, that's the one. Polygamy. That's different.
I don't know what that is.
Polyamorous. Well, I know there are people that are into that and things like that, but I think normally in this situation, the idea is that you get to be part of the situation. You're not the dude like... This is literally like the dude like trying to like climb up, like... There is like I can't even remember what the hell there is some kind of like film that
polygamy is when one man is married to more than one wife.
Oh, that's the one.
Time.
Yeah, I knew there was more than one going on. But it's literally the equivalent of like basically like someone's basically trying to peep in on someone, but you're like they're like, well, this is your fucking wife, dude, and you're just like, yeah, just fucking do it, but I don't get to watch, so I'm going to be like the goblin on the roof.
Yeah, I'm just going the fucking diddler on the roof, just climbing up,
and they're bagging away, and then this is when Angelica and that have got through. They kill they kill the partner with her. I don't know who she is. Woman. She kills the security guard as he like walks away. So you're like, that's harsh.
Yeah.
Like kills him, and they both head off to that. And then they both appear like literally walking into this room as if this is the part of the mansion. They'd just be like, well, obviously this is an important.
They probably saw the dude on the roof.
Probably,
just stood there watching.
That's the most obvious thing to get away with. But I'm pretty sure later it's not until a little bit after that they go like. And then Angelica the other woman walks off around the side to go to the roof because it's an everyday normal occurrence to walk into an open outdoor broken down hut or something where there's no roof, it's just brick walls with a bed.
The banging
to see
hut.
someone banging to walk in to kill them and then be like, oh, there's the dude on the roof. You go climb up. You need to go kill that dude. But he sees it going on, so he like hides away, so you think, oh, is he going to be safe because he's like hidden away? But no, like one of them climbs up the side and gets towards him. The woman in the bed gets like gutted. he's like getting to us on like, no, don't do this. You don't have to do this. And it's so fucking included like him on the roof who ends up like down on his knee, like don't kill.
No. It's just like real melodramatic.
Like I have money.
And nobody else in this really reacts mental when they're killed, but he drops to his knees and is like, don't kill me. He's such a weird fucking dude the whole time. Like, every action he does is fucking over the top. He's so funny.
But yeah, so that scene's in there. No idea why. I found it really fucking funny.
I think it was just surely it just had to bump the body count up.
Yeah, I think so. They were just like, where can we add the scene? Because it seemed like it's so... Like, it's like, oh, we don't have the mansion anymore. So we just have to go to some random setting to bang.
Yeah. Because this is what has literally just clicked in my head. That it was the security guard they killed. And I'll bring this up when we get to the very end. Because this made no sense to me. But and it kind of plays into these two characters. Because they just came here to bang. That's it. And then they get the guy, who is the guy that she was having an affair with. Yeah. It's the young lad. They tie him to a tree and just whip him loads, which is quite funny. Yeah. Quite erotic and quite funny. And then you don't see him die, do you? Or do they shoot him? I don't know. I don't know what happened.
They stabbed him, but
maybe they stabbed him. I don't know.
But yeah, he gets a good whipping.
But then they go into the room where Terry is. Yeah. Now Terry is in bed with someone.
That is the rich guy, the producer.
He's dead. He gets killed during the carnival.
The guy during the carnival is like her right hand man, like producer guy. The guy in the bed with her is like her husband, but he's also like a major mogul in the like movie or whatever. Seen him.
I thought he was
Max Marsh.
He looks like the guy she was having an affair with's dad, and I was thinking, like, are these swingers? Are they like, oh yeah, you can just bang. You can be with a random couple, and you can bang my dad.
He was in the scene earlier because he was the one like getting all like uppity with people. Well, he was the guy that did the conversation. Like, I don't want to talk to you, wasn't he? He wasn't that wasn't the same guy as the journalist. I thought the guy was a journalist who got killed. Actually, who was with Terry, not a producer. I thought he was a journalist. This like from before. I don't know. It was really hard to follow this at times,
and it doesn't matter. I know anyone.
He's definitely her. He's definitely her like rich part because he says about like money. And like I've got like I can get whatever you want. Don't do this. You know, how much do you want? How much money do you want? He says stuff like that.
Maybe
before he's about to die.
I thought it was the dad that just fucking ploughed her.
Maybe it was the dad too. I don't know. I didn't think the dad character in my mind. Couldn't think of what he looked like. I remember conversations. I can't remember what he looked like.
Yeah,
I thought that this was her rich, like the guy who basically is. Probably not the actual father, but the guy who believes he is the father.
Maybe. I thought he was already dead.
And they're the husband and wife, basically. Like, the guy that gets killed at the carnival was much less. He was kind of like the guy that was like with her, like as if he was like, I didn't even know if he was a producer or if he's like a journalist or a publicist that was with her. Because at one point I couldn't even tell. It says she was an actress, and at one point I got vibes like they were talking about a story they were trying to tell. It's
fucking weird.
And I was like, is she a journalist or an actress? Which one fucking is she meant to be? But the guy that got killed at the carnival was definitely there to help her, whereas the guy that was in bed is the guy that was basically, I'm sure that's who she's married to.
Funding.
Yeah, basically the funding so that she is comfortable. So however he's ploughed the shit, I don't know. She's just asleep in bed, to be fair. You don't know if she's fully ploughed.
That is true.
But this is again where it goes into that full on cult. Like, so you are thinking in your head, are they actually going to go all the way with this? Are they going to actually show, again, which is another reason that this film would have got banned like from the beginning. No matter all of the weird sex stuff and things like that.
Yeah.
But this would have, because it followed so, not hugely close, but like the Manson murders were in 1968,
69, maybe. I mean, I can't remember off the top of my head, but it's fair. It's like relatively close enough that it was probably.
Yeah, it was 1969.
Yeah, but it's close enough in public consciousness. It's only like 6 years separated,
Yeah, that's what I mean. So it was less less than that. It was like 6-7 years. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that still seems quite close, but it's also something that you would never really. It's a huge taboo to show basically a pregnant woman getting killed.
Yeah, of course.
And yeah, you get to where they go up and the knife, goes into her stomach and you see her scream, and obviously the rich dude's like, I get like her husband's like, I'll give you money, you don't do this, you don't need to do this, like holding her back, and then he gets shot, I think.
No, I'm pretty sure as soon as she gets stabbed.
Oh, that's when it cuts. So he's like, but I swear he dies before she gets stabbed. Actually,
maybe he gets shot.
He's like, don't do this. I thought he got shot because he like falls back into the chair.
Gunny probably.
And then like they get up to her and you're like, are they actually gonna do it? And then it goes down into that, and you hear her scream, and then we have the oddest cut where we suddenly hear like the people behind the filmmakers talking, and you see it swap around, and suddenly we're in the studio and they're kind of moving away from the set of Terry's body left on there, and you're following like, he's not the director, he's just like a guy who works on the set who's then like talking to another like a woman, and they're like, oh yeah, we're getting like, are you getting all horny basically from this that's going on, like. So yeah, the film takes a complete, as in movie inside of a movie, as in we've suddenly broken the fourth wall and suddenly we were actually making a movie. So you're suddenly like, whoa, okay, what the hell's going on here? Obviously the last few minutes, like even the whipping maybe, is quite like, oh holy shit, okay, this has took it up a notch kind of thing. The murders, like the sex followed by the murders, if it wasn't so fucking funny at parts, you maybe could take it more seriously. But then like him getting whipped followed by what happens in the room, and the fact that they're actually going to kill the pregnant woman or stab the baby or whatever, like the fact that they do it, you're like, okay, suddenly I'm a bit more shocked, like shit, okay, this has gone away from that kind of hilariously bad to kind of like, oh, this is weirdly interesting, what's going to go now? But then this happens and you're like, what the fuck is going on? And then you're just following, and if it wasn't for the name's title, that's where I started to be like, this is how they're trying to act like as if we're seeing behind the scenes of the real film. This is where they're suddenly trying to justify the snuff idea, but I thought they were just trying to justify the snuff idea at first by just being like, we're seeing like the sets as if this was going away, so because they've in the mythology of the idea of a snuff film, the urban legend of it all, the idea that it's kind of like would be like you're seeing like behind the scenes stuff and you're seeing that kind of thing. So
that's real, isn't it?
I thought it was them just trying to imply that all of this stuff that has come before, we've really done this stuff, and that was their cheap way of trying to do it. But instead we have this guy who's, I don't know, working behind the camera, and then he goes up to a girl and he's like, basically like one of the girls on the crew is like, how good was that, amazing, is this making you, basically is like, is this making you horny, basically? He's like, he starts making out with her and you're just like, well, this is, what the fuck?
Yeah, fucking weird.
And then literally he's like, is this making you real hot? Like, basically, should we, like, let's lie down here? Well, there's still a whole set around, and then like he starts proper getting into it, like they're gonna do the fuck, and she's like, we're doing it right here in front of everyone. And he's like, yeah, he's like, turn on the cameras. Yeah. Like, and then you go into, I guess for a lot of people, what would be quite a shocking kind of where they basically start like pinning her down and she's screaming and she's like, what the hell are you doing? And he's like telling them to get closer as he like pulls out a knife and starts cutting her. Yeah, and
this has got to be where the budget went, because there is like a bit where he's like slicing her and digging into her, but then he gets like a can never remember what it is. It's almost like a tiny bolt cutter or something, and he cuts like one of her fingers.
Oh, it cuts
off,
one of her, yeah.
Which is gross.
And it does like it proper. Yeah, you've got the cutting, but yeah, then he starts lopping off fingers.
Yeah.
So it does feel proper. Suddenly, like shit. This is like violent. This is like hostile kind of way in your mind. Like this is proper that kind of violence that goes on. So you're like, holy shit, this is them trying to, but obviously, because they've done it feels so out of place from everything that comes before it.
Yeah.
And he continues to gut her until he's literally there, like laughing and screaming with his guts in her guts in his hand. Like he's like, and he starts to like just laugh and look like a maniac, and he like rubs his blood over his face, and well, then that's it.
And then the film like runs out.
Yeah, it runs out of film. Like, oh shit, we haven't got, like someone over the camera says like, oh shit, I think there's a.
Yeah,
we cut off.
Did we use it all or something like that?
Trying to make it again, so like that kind of found footage kind of thing. But
it's just fucking weird.
The scene, that scene itself, and I understand why people say it's only remembered because of its ending, because the scene itself is an oddly interesting kind of, like, at its time, trying to do that kind of style, kind of take that kind of thing. And the fact they use, like, the set, or have recreated the set they did, is interesting.
Well, but they tried to.
Yeah, they tried to. It
but
doesn't.
If you notice, it's different, because I don't know if you read about this part.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you want to say? Because it's...
No, you go ahead.
So, when I did a little bit of research into it, the original film, I think, was shot in like 1971 or something. And that's all of it up until the Snuff bit. And that was supposed to be, like we said, Slaughter. And then there was like a name change and it got shelved. And they ended up bringing in a completely different director to do this last segment. But I don't think they realised that because I watched it again, because I was looking at, I saw the knife go into her stomach, and then I like looked at my phone for like 5 seconds, and then when I looked back, it was completely different, and I was like, "What the fuck is this?" So I put it back, and then I saw it, and then I noticed that the set is completely different as well. I tried to make it look like
it's mainly just her part in the bed, because that's the bit they kind of close up on. Is the only bit that really
kind of looks similar.
They've tried to make the Terry bit, basically. They're trying to make it look like it's still Terry in the bed. But the rest of it, the more you look at it, the more it starts to be like, what the fuck happened? But yeah, because they decided to tack on an ending to make it more producible. Which again, you're right, around 1971, which makes it even worse because it was so close to the Manson.
Real close.
Like, that's like
3 years, isn't it?
Yeah, that's like 2 poor taste level of close.
Yeah.
To be this close to like parts of the story. It's interesting that basically they used, this was basically put on the shelf for years, wasn't it? They were like, oh, we can't use this as it is. This is fucking awful. This is terrible. How the fuck do we use this? And I think the original version of the Cross. I think the original version. So it was Michael and Roberta Finley. They were the ones who filmed in Argentina and did the original version. I think it was Horatio Fredrickson and Simon Nocturne who did the additional stuff to kind of pick up and try and put it when they realised that this isn't a sellable film.
Yeah.
But because they had it and they paid money for it for some reason. I don't know why they even bought it when they did that, but it had a budget of £30,000 is what it had at the time.
Yeah.
So they could have made something okay, I guess, but that's not a huge amount of money at all for a film.
No, definitely
even at that point. That's not a lot of money. But when they kind of linked that ending in, it only came under the idea because in the mid-70s there was this huge urban legend of snuff films.
Yeah.
And if you don't know what a snuff film is, it's basically exactly what we just described in the film. It is the idea that someone has made a horror film or a film of any kind where the actors actually die.
Yeah.
Where the actors were actually murdered and killed and, a serious crime has been committed on film. And in the 70s and, in America, but this even came in the UK as part of the whole video nasty kind of act. The idea that they were censoring films and stuff, and this was around the world in certain parts. Obviously, we took it to a high level here in the UK, but in other parts they didn't take it to this level. But because they started trying to censor and cut a lot of films around the world, is what a lot of people said built to this idea of like they were cutting things out, but some people were taking it to extreme levels, and that snuff films were being made and being pulled by people who like didn't have money to make an actual film, so they killed real people to make it look real, because they said that horror films were starting to get to the level where you couldn't tell the difference between what was real and what wasn't real,
because the blood is bright red in real life.
Exactly, and that's the thing that in your head that it's kind of hard to ever think that. Did you ever see that blood, that red paint looking blood, and go, oh my god, they've actually torn her guts out and spread it all over his face, because it doesn't look like real blood at all.
And they've got a bit of like
even her finger didn't look like that real.
No. Well, her body's the worst, the worst culprit, because it's the Kevin Bacon.
It's the Kevin Bacon
Tom
style,
Savini thing, you know, where it's like her. It's like clearly like the top section of her body, and then her like I don't know anybody who's got like a 4-5 foot torso. You know, it's like real long.
Yeah, it's literally like the mannequin under the bed, isn't it?
Yeah.
It is, and it's not even like when you do the wide shots, it's not even well placed because her head does not look perfectly aligned with her body. Because a lot of the shots of her screaming are mainly close up to like above the chest, so you can just see her screaming with blood splattering on her face or something. But no, it's an interesting area. It's kind of what made this interesting is the idea that the producers of this film thought that in order to save our film, we would create this odd hype around the film and say it was a snuff film, which you'd think would straight away, because it had become a kind of big urban legend around film and porn. Basically, the porn industry were a major part, like dragged into a lot of this, because they said you do such violent acts in porn or whatever that we think it's porn stars, or we think you do that to actresses so that you can use them once and get rid of them. That was the kind of thing that kind of built up in this whole like in that era of all of, you know, this was the major upcoming of like porn. And with porn came a lot of increase in like body being shown in horror. And there is that kind of grimy crossover that kind of happened where you would have some films, some low budget ones where people were, I'd say, confusing the idea of what makes a horror film and what makes a porn. And they would kind of blend them together. And that's why you've got quite a few 70s and 80s horrors that are a little bit like, fucking hell, this is basically like, this is either softcore or sometimes hardcore porn. Like, it's literally just holding back on that penetration.
It is, and mostly euphoric.
Especially in like European ones. And this is why they'd link it to a lot of the European ones. Like this, because they knew this had been made in South America, Argentina. They were like, well, it could be, because they get away with a lot of shit. Like they were using a lot of stereotypes. To be like, people back there are animals.
They're animals. The life's cheap.
They just kill each other all the time. So it's really interesting that. That they took the approach to go to the level of literally releasing posters about how it was banned, you know, in certain parts of the country, and how, like, in New York, that was a big, like, it's the only place that really made money was New York when it was released as this kind of grimy, but even porn theatres wouldn't show it because they said it was bad for them. It was bad for them because people assumed it was to do with the industry, and the porn industry were like, we don't want anything to do with that shit. But like the low theatres, some of them were showing them, and I think for like low release, this didn't get like a wide release. Obviously, this was only like little release. Some people do say that there was the original Slaughter cut did get released under Slaughter for a short period of time as like uncut version, whereas this version got released, and in pretty much, apart from like its early stages in like New York, anywhere else it was released, it was like heavily cut down, completely. But in New York, like in its opening like weekend, it made like more money than One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
I read for 3 weeks.
For 3 weeks, Or what that had made in 3 weeks, it made like that much money in like one go, which is fucking mad. Like, but it shows the hype. We've talked about like good hype campaigns, like the Blair Witch Project, and Blair Witch Project has the same thing where people really thought.
And they sold it as real because the producer or the director, producer, whatever. Was the producer probably. There were too many directors. The producer was like, well, I'm not saying it is, I'm not saying it isn't, you know. So they would be like, is it real? And he'd be like, I'm not telling you. Wink. And he'd be like, is it yes or no? It is what you think it is. And then a wink. You know, it's like he's not committing to it because he knows if he's like, it's snuff.
Well, his line was like, if I say yes, I'm going to prison. And if I say no, it's people bad for the film. So, you know, what can I say?
Might be.
Maybe it's real scenes. Let's see what happens. But like that kind of furor that had built around the film. And there are loads of snuff films that not snuff films. Sorry, there are loads of films that people think are snuff films.
Yeah.
Blair Witch was one where people literally thought that this was real footage, obviously. But Cannibal Holocaust, obviously that is one that was looked at the time as being real because people thought of it as like a documentary or something like that was kind of thought of. And
yes, the director was also arrested. We just had fuck it. I'll let him. I'll tell him. We just we spoke for like 10 minutes, and then we just realised that it stopped recording.
Yeah.
So we were like, how do we come into this naturally?
We couldn't do it. I think we have done that before. We have like naturally done it, but that time I don't know why. It felt so much like we were having to force what we were saying. So you've had your own sudden break-in to segue back into the film.
Yeah.
We've had our own sudden behind-the-scenes break-in. We broke the fourth wall.
broke the fourth wall.
I will now slaughter Robbie on our podcast like a real podcast, like a snuff film.
Like a snuff podcast.
What would you call that? But yes, so we were trying to talk about actual snuff films, not actual snuff films. I've just done the same mistake I did before. But anyway, we were trying to wrap up the idea that this film obviously created a giant buzz around it. It made a lot of money around that kind of part, like Cannibal Holocaust or like Blair Witch, where people have believed that they're real.
Yeah.
And then things that I didn't get to tell you that I remind you now is we linking it back to British. So linking it back to British, as Video Nasty is our British kind of area. We in Britain we finally got the film in 1982.
Yeah.
Video Astra was the company that produced and released the video, but the problem was they released the film to, again, a kind of big eruption of Video Nasty controversy.
Yeah.
The Sunday Times published an article outraged about the film and brought back up all of the stuff that had happened, like the feminist protests that were happening where they were smashing open theatres.
Smashing open windows, taking that out. Yeah.
You can tell how far enough we are at this point. But this is it. Raw, baby.
This is
raw and unedited.
This is raw and unedited.
We were told the other day our editing's terrible. It's because we don't fucking edit.
It can't be terrible because there is none.
If we edited it, then we wouldn't keep this part in. But fuck it, who cares? This is how it works. We don't really care about our part. We're just sharing our experience.
It's like jazz, you just go with the flow.
So, in the UK, though, the film only had a short video release before it was pulled back out from under the release because, well, the article told them all about the things that happened in America, and, the way they sold it wasn't very good anyway, because the video itself talked about the original legendary atrocity that was shot and banned in New York. The actors and actresses had dedicated their life to making this film were never seen or heard from again. That's not the kind of thing that's going to make any of the police or broadcasting agencies go, yeah, that's fine. Yeah. You can release that.
It's called Snuff. Oh, that's fine.
It's a lovely family film.
Yeah.
I think it's a Disney classic, right?
Yeah. But and the Video Nasties were massively because of a lot of stuff that was still very taboo in British culture at the time. So, obviously, religious elements were a thing that got massively banned, drug and alcohol use, but then gratuitous sex and violence, which this film is slightly tamer than something like New York Ripper, but in terms of, there is quite a heavy bit of sex.
But it has a lot of taboo subjects like cult leader, Charles Manson style.
Drugs at the start.
Drugs, grooming.
Grooming, yeah.
Underage sex, rape. It has a lot of that stuff.
Yeah.
And then obviously it does have a scene at the end that tries to make you believe that that is a real snuff film, and that someone behind the scenes of the film you've just been watching for the last hour and 10 minutes or so, 15, is now getting murdered.
Yeah.
So, it has a lot of that stuff to really you understand why they would never have released it. So this obviously did not get a cinema release at all.
No.
And it wouldn't have got a cinema release at all. And the film wasn't even properly released in the UK again after that short little blip of a video period until 2003, which was just some shitty release.
And, like you said, it would have just been in CX or Sex, as they call it. Just a cheap fucking shit film. Because... As we said before, we were cut off. Before the Matrix silenced us. As we repeat ourselves. It's not a great film. It's aside from a few moments that are kind of funny but unintentionally, it's a pretty shit film. I think
it's a real slog. The beginning, Born to be Wild, kind of with some woman getting chased through like the fields to be like shot or to be only injured or wounded kind of thing, and you're like, what the fuck is happening right now? And then after that, it's a slog until it starts becoming so bad it's good. Yeah, in the worst way, because it becomes so bad it's good when it starts covering taboo subjects in the worst, probably poor taste way. But for some people out there, you probably could get quite a kick out of maybe the last maybe half an hour of the film. For some people, they'll probably kind of enjoy it in a so bad it's good kind of way.
I mean, that was the last half an hour that I enjoyed.
Yeah, most of it, a good start of it, you will probably be scrolling on your phone, not paying attention. Yeah. But as I said to Rob, I told him I was trying to give him a push that it gets so funny. I was creasing, because I was creasing with laughter in that whole backstory. There were so many scenes. The narration, the dialogue was so fucking terrible, but in such a funny way that, there were some scenes in this that literally had me going, like, laughing at my head. And this is in the middle of the night, me just watching the film, just laughing my head off. Going like, I don't know why the fuck I'm laughing so much at this, but this is fucking funny. And I wasn't on anything. I hadn't drunk anything, no edible, nothing.
It was funny.
None of that shit. Yeah. But so in terms of Video Nasties, I understand why this would obviously have made it to that list. But any film that had gratuitous anything at that point in time was getting on that list. This film pushed it to that extra level to be defined as a video nasty. But unlike some of the stronger ones we've talked about before, as we said, this was a far less commercial release, and I was trying to pick out ones that looked a bit more left field, ones that maybe some people have never heard of. And the most interesting part of this was the kind of the background of the idea of like snuff films and the impact it had in America, and reading more into that, kind of getting to learn a little bit more about snuff films and why people actually even fought. And to be clear, in terms of snuff films, it is widely regarded that there is no evidence that there has ever actually been an official snuff film that was ever made. It is deemed an urban legend. Then again, I mean, if anyone had seen the evidence, when you kill someone and you film it, you tend to get a bit squeamish about suddenly going, let's take this to Cannes Film Festival. You know what I mean? You don't tend to just go down to the local shop and go, so I just made this. Can I sell it? Or go into the Sunday Times at the time and going, can you review my film, please?
Can you review my film?
I give you an interview. I killed all these people.
I think it's cool though.
Urban legend, but at the same time, it's not something you would blag about anyway. You wouldn't be like, I've made this film and I just murdered everyone in it, unless you're really like fucked up, which could be anyone. That's about all I can say on this film. It's not bad, but it's so bad it's good. But it's got an interesting history around.
Yeah, I'd agree with you on that. I think kind of to summarise, I love covering the video nasties because for the most part, the films are the fun, the kind of gruesome in that kind of throwback, and they have like a dirty, scuzzy feeling to them. A lot of the ones that we've covered have been really good fun. I think this is maybe our 7th, 8th one that we've covered, so we're not even a quarter of the way through the list yet. But it is, they're great fun to watch. But I think this is probably the weakest of the bunch when I'm actually looking at the films. I don't know whether I'd recommend people actually watch it because, like we said, outside of a few funny and unintentionally funny moments, it's not that good. It's a bit of a slog.
It's not a well-made film.
No. And with that, we will briefly cut to something else of us just mutilating and killing somebody that has nothing to do with it. As always, if you've enjoyed the show, then make sure to hit that subscribe button. Let's try and get to sorry, I'm moving the cat off the table. She's all over the place.
This is a shit show episode.
Yeah.
But this episode is as poorly constructed as this film.
As the film. Yeah. But I think that deserves a subscribe and a 5-star review. I will say that from the bottom of my heart.
I would say that this is... if this is the first episode you've ever watched, I understand that you might be thinking, well, this is absolutely terrible. This didn't cover what I was expecting. However, maybe go back and watch some of our others. That sounds really weird, but we've always got this manic energy going on. And again, we do not tend to edit or sort episodes, so you're seeing us just as we are. This is us. We're fucking insane.
Like Eddie Murphy, we're raw. And we will see you next week. So take care and goodbye.